Good. So I wanted to tell you a little bit today about what we do when it comes to research, but also discuss with you some of the future challenges that both of these areas, robotics and artificial intelligence, are posing to the academic community and also to the society at large. I like to start with a couple of videos. And most of these, apart from one, are from my own lab. To give you an idea what we mean by a robot and also what we mean by artificial intelligence. To me, robot is a physical system, so something that has a body, like we humans, and that is equipped with sensing. So in the same way as we have our senses, robots have sensors, such as cameras, tactile sensors, force and torque sensors that allow robots to measure things in the environment, colors of something, the distance to something, shape, or the tactile feeling of something. And that knowledge is then used by the software that the robot is equipped with to make some form of intelligent decisions, such as, for example, avoiding obstacles or picking up objects and so on. The AI part, or the artificial intelligence part, is actually that software. And lots of the work that we do in the lab is actually developing the software. We really don't build robots. We equip robots with different types of sensors and use the information that is then gathered by the sensors, the things that are measured, to equip the robot with the ability to interact with the environment. And this is difficult. It's difficult partially because we don't always know what the sensors are capable of measuring, but also because it's not so very easy to just encode the knowledge. So many things that we would like robots to do is something that is so very easy for us humans to do. So this is just one video that we recorded. One of my collaborators here is preparing a dove. So he has all the ingredients, and the idea was that the robot observes what my colleague is doing. And in the same proactive way as I would do when my mom does that, help her with more sugar, with more milk, with more water, and so on. And I do that by the fact that I have been doing and baking bread for quite some time. I know how it feels if the bread needs more flour, for example. And I can visually obtain the information if my mom, for example, would then need more flour. So how does a robot gather that intelligence? How does the robot understand and proactively works and helps the human to do this? Another thing that comes very naturally to us is to physically collaborate with each other. So helping somebody carry a table, a heavy thing around. And apart from using dialogue and ask for more, let's say, physical support if you need it, we are also very good in reading the person that we are collaborating with. So if we know that we are stronger than that person, or that that person potentially have a pain or not functioning arm or something like that, we will collaborate by providing more physical support. So all of these things, preparing or developing the software for equipping robots with the capability to understand things and also to act accordingly, is what we call artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and robots have also been entering many of the areas that have classically been and are still, to a large extent, been done actively by humans. So one image or one video here that I'm showing on your right is from a company called Kiva Systems that has been bought by Amazon. And that has helped Amazon to think differently about their storage places. So when you order things on Amazon and the list of the goods that you have ordered or bought comes to a person that is supposed to find them and pack them for you, initially, when the Amazon started, you had people running around searching for the goods, packing them in, and so on. And then, a couple of years back, they automated their storage spaces, right? So now you don't have people running around. There are shelves on small robots looking very much like vacuum cleaners, autonomous vacuum cleaners. And everything is based on software, artificial intelligence, that in a way plans the movement and coordinates the movement of the shelves so that there is optimal use of energy, for example. So shelves with goods that have been ordered by many users and so on are used more frequently and so on. So one can think about how to optimize the business and the effect on the whole kind of environment by using also artificial intelligence. A little bit in a vision about the future. So, and where do we go? How does the academic society think about robots? So for quite some time, the robots have been developed and thought of being used as systems that are doing or taking over dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs from humans. So anything that we do, but we don't find very developing or amusing or interesting to do, we would kind of like buy a robot that can do those things. There are many things in our home environments maybe that we would not like to do, like for example cleaning. And then there are also many jobs that are maybe heavy, physically heavy for the body, and that shouldn't be done by humans. But how do robots learn? How are the robots programmed to learn how to do things? Today, most of the robots that we buy are pre-programmed. So somebody has written this AI or the software that the robot uses in order to interact with the users and with the environment. Now, one of the research strands that is becoming more and more popular in the academic community is to develop the capabilities for robots to learn from observation. So in the same way as kids learn from, or children from their parents by observing and from their peers, one would like robots to use their senses and through interaction, by having a teacher, learn in a very natural way, in the same way as humans learn. One of the projects that addressed this, this problem or this idea was a project that was recently finished last year, what's called robohow.cog. And the idea here was we had a scenario where we wanted a robot to learn how to bake pizza. So the robot would need to use the knowledge that it has available in order to build a plan of putting the ingredients together and then also physically bake the pizza. So the idea for the project was to actually use the knowledge that is available on the web for us humans to do this. So if you would like to bake a pizza and you don't know how to do it, what do? You first maybe search for a recipe, okay? And if you don't have any cookbooks at home, or maybe even if you have, you will go and Google for the recipe, right? So you will try to find a recipe on the web. And robots are very good in doing the Googling, right? So this is not such a big thing. So finding the recipe and also understanding what the recipe, the ingredients that are in the recipe. The second thing is to use the ingredients and to find them in a kitchen. For that, we can use a visual feedback or the knowledge where these ingredients are usually stored. Or if none of these ingredients are available in home, the robot can just, again, use the internet to order from, I don't know, Mathem or something like that, those ingredients to be delivered to the home. Now, the next step for the robot is, when having all the ingredients, understanding how to mix them. So basically understanding how to use your body to put the ingredients together. And then also learning maybe how to make a dough, or if the robot is to make pancakes or something like that, how to flip them and so on. And in the same way as we do, so if we don't know or understand, if we don't understand then the textual description in a recipe, we will Google for the activity, for example, at the YouTube. And there are lots of YouTube videos where one can look into how a professional chef, for example, is making pizza or pancakes or something like that. So, so far so good. We could do all of those things. There are still very big challenges, of course, of understanding video sequences and understanding how human body moves. But one big problem, and the work that we continue to work with scientifically, is how to transfer the activity that the human body does to a robot body, given that robot's body is not as flexible, it's maybe a bit bigger, doesn't have as many degrees of freedom, doesn't either have, for example, skin, that is a very big kind of like organ or sensor giving us lots of feedback about things that we interact with and so on. So the biggest challenge right now is to actually understand how to build the software to transfer the knowledge, the kinematic, dynamic knowledge from a human interacting with the environment to a robot, achieving the same type of result, maybe not in exactly the same way, so it's not about imitation, but it's about learning how to use its own body in order to achieve the same result. And this is still a big open problem. Why? There are many challenges. One of the challenges is, again, the fact that we can not yet build as flexible systems as humans have, or have flexible bodies. We can't build hands with so many degrees of freedom and they have same type of dynamics. And even if we could build hands with 5 fingers, these are still not covered by skin, which, as I said, is a big source of information for humans. I usually say to my PhD students that this is something I would like to see, not necessarily robot doing the dishes because we have dishwashers today, but really doing this advanced hand manipulation, interaction with objects in different media. So we don't necessarily think what kind of force we use when we interact with things in air, in water, or in oil, right? We are not putting lots of kind of like mental energy on planning that. We have lots of experience that is just somehow used, and we do lots of reactive behavior. So when we see that something is slipping in the hand, we apply more force and things like that. And all of that is some source of intelligence, and in a robot that would be artificial intelligence. But just getting that experience of understanding that one needs more force when there is oil between fingers and the cup than when there is no oil. How does the robot understand that? Now, this is one of the videos where we showed recent results of how robots with, in this case, 3 or 4 fingers can adapt to the fact that the weight of the object changes or that there is some external force that changes the pose of the object in the hand. And the small green things that you see, these are the special fingertips on the robot. These are small tactile sensors that are actually filled with fluid. And here the robot can also measure vibrations and texture of the material the fingers are interacting with. But the cost of each finger or each tactile pad is 200,000 crowns. So it costs lots of money in order to also build the systems that get the feedback that one would need in order to demonstrate what one would consider to be a very simple behavior. Now, robotics is a field that is rather wide, and in order to be able to then work with this kind of systems, one needs to have lots of knowledge about how to program things, something about the automatic control, statistics, mathematics, machine learning, general AI methods, signal processing, and so on. But there are, again, some interesting challenges and also interesting applications because, for example, by having the need of programming robot hands, we are also at the same time trying to understand how humans use their hands. And there is not so much knowledge about that. So which fingers are most important ones? Can we do everything that we do on a daily basis with only 4 fingers or 3 fingers, or only by having a thumb and pointing finger and so on? So how do we understand that? Now, when we started to do this research on understanding human hands, lots of people, lots of the previous work that has been done was about putting gloves on human hands and then having humans interact, or human subjects interact with the things and measure, for example, forces and so on. The problem is that when we put gloves or measuring devices on human hands, we tend to do things differently, right? Because there is something that affects the way we interact with objects. So we started to look into how we can use just pure video sequences of humans interacting with the scenes and understanding how fingers are used. And what we didn't expect, and that was very interesting for us, that there were 2 other communities that are very interested of that. And that was the prosthetics community, so people building hand prostheses, and gaming industry. So the first one, the prosthetics industry, they know how to build hands that look very realistic, have 5 fingers and so on, but are very, very limited in their motion. So most of the prosthetic hands can just open or close, at least those cheapest ones. For the gaming community, most of the games that one plays, when you move around in spaces and interact with objects and so on, you don't see your body, you don't see your hands. When you interact with objects, whatever that is in the game, it's usually just the object in the air, so it's not about hands. So the idea was like, okay, can we visualize human hands also and interact very naturally, not by joysticks and so on, but using something like Microsoft Kinect, interact with objects and use that also in virtual reality and so on. So just to show you that lots of the research that is being done in robotics community is not only just about programming robots, is also very valuable for other types of communities that want to understand human body in general. A little bit about buzzwords, because I think a lot is being written in media about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and I think that most of you have heard also about deep learning. This is an image from NVIDIA, which says a little bit about, I don't know if you can see, from 1950s to 2010, in a way how the areas a bit changed and what are the buzzwords that are being used. And apart from then AI, machine learning, and so on, deep learning, people are also using something, another buzzword that is big data, which I also think is important to know about. I'm not going to read the slide. You can read why things are different this time and why we are seeing lots of progress in using artificial intelligence in doing things in a better way than humans can do it. I'm going to give you some examples in a couple of minutes. It's about that the progress is being made in very many different areas, right? So we have the access to lots of stored data almost about anything. There are lots of images, there are lots of videos, and these are not only measured by people that are interested in measuring things. We as users are also posting lots of those things on the web, right? It's easy to do that, it's easy to upload a video or an image, and we are also generating lots of data which has labels on them. So we have a tendency of saying what that image is, or where the image was taken, or the GPS data can be used, and so on. So this is one thing, access to the data. Then it's also the processing power. Today we have lots of computers and also access to different types of, let's say, cloud computing arrangements and so on, that for very little money, as an individual user, we can also get data processed without actually ourselves having that particular kind of like computer cluster or something like that. So that's another thing that is important. And then I would also say that lots of the companies that are willing to employ and then educate people further in how to use different types of algorithms using statistics, mathematics, and so on, that are then also moving globally between companies and so on. So lots of knowledge is being kind of let's say, distributed all over the world in the areas that are relevant for this particular development. What are the challenges? So robotics is nothing new. It has been around since 60s, and with ABB, Sweden has been one of the leading countries in also providing or developing the robotic technology. And classically, robots have been used very much in industries such as car industry. So in industries where you invest lots of money on building a production line and potentially not changing it for 20 or 30 years, okay? And, you know, on the question of whether robots will in the future do something humans cannot do, I usually say, well, that's already a fact. Robots can work 24/7. They don't get angry, irritated, depressed. So there are many things where we can, or many applications where robots have been used for, again, large-scale production. But now the robots are moving, or, well, not yet completely to our homes, but these are the ideas of the application, so that the next market will be, in a way, the home market. I'm not going to talk very much about self-driving cars and so on, because I think that technology is more or less mature to be used and introduced to regular users, but it needs some, let's say, political decisions or liability issues to be resolved and so on. Now, moving from a very controlled environment, such as a car factory, you see no humans around interacting with objects, to a home environment, where the robots are maybe expected to, I don't know, cut bread, or as I said, flip pancakes and so on. They need to interact with objects that we use on a daily basis. Okay? Most of these objects have been built to suit our body. So if we didn't have any fingers, or if we had only one or maybe two, the world around us and the products that we are using, our phones, our cutlery, everything, would most likely look completely different from what it does, right? So it's not per se that we want to build robots that completely resemble humans. We want to build structures that are equally good in interacting with objects that are, again, being built for bodies like this. And have systems that maybe don't need half an hour to pick up a spatula. Why? Because we will be bored. We will want things to happen faster. So there is an issue about building things that resembled humans to some extent. But these things are still very difficult to do. So how does a robot or the software or the artificial intelligence understand what are the capabilities of my body? How should I achieve the result of what the human is doing by having a little bit different body? And I don't know if you ever think about how many things need to be put at place when you cut bread in the morning. How much do you plan? If you cut bread. Find another example. But let's say you don't think maybe, but you do it very mechanically. You know what type of bread it is. You know what kind of knife you need. So whether you need knife with or without teeth, for example. You know exactly with inclination angle to use. You know exactly what force to use, or you at least test, right? And then you use your other hand also as a tool, right? To have a little bit of a force that helps that cutting. And this is something that we almost do without thinking, right? This is somehow already there, trained in the body, stored in the brain, and is just being used. So in the same way, we would like robots to learn how to do that from experience. But we are still not there. Other things, well, or one thing that is difficult or that is not at place is not so much about making a grand plan of how to cut bread. If there is a structure, like, I don't know, in AlphaGo or maybe in chess playing, so if we can say something about which actions could be used, then we could potentially generate a plan of what robot could do in order to learn things. The difficult thing is the actual interaction, and then also the general aspect of being able to generalize between different sizes, for example, of knives, of different types of knives, or the fact that there are different design for the handles and things like that. So what is hard is not necessarily the high-level planning, but it's the low-level, sensory-based, actual physical interaction with the environment. In relation to also the interaction between a robot and a human, it's also an additional dimension that needs to be taken into account, and this is understanding of the context. So if a robot and a human are to collaborate, carry a table together and something like that, there are actual bigger expectations on robots not doing the wrong thing than we have on humans we collaborate with, right? Because we can accept if the human did something wrong, that they will say, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't understand what you meant, and so on. But will we be equally forgiving if a robot makes an error? And if a robot says, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. So one of the big aspects that now goes more into kind of the ethical, moral direction is about ensuring and making these systems very safe. And this is very difficult to do if we are not able to put somehow in the robot's brain all the possible interaction scenarios that the robot would experience when interacting with regular end users. And one of the challenges we are dealing with there is the actual knowledge gathering. So how do we measure things and how do we store them? Because the robots, as I said, are equipped with sensors, and they are not measuring exactly the same things as humans do. So the basis of the problem is sometimes also that the knowledge that we have access to is just a little bit different, right? Because it comes from different sources. So in order to be able to kind of make sure that robots really understand what a human has said or showed or meant, we need to find a good way of how we, by using mathematics, statistics, and general methods from machine learning, how do we find a good way of then storing the knowledge that, or the measurements that the robot has, so that they mean the same things as they mean to humans. This is just one example, but it's kind of like visualizing that. So the robot has a metric understanding of the world. It knows the X, Y, Z coordinate of something being somewhere, where we humans don't. We never talk in centimeters or millimeters or something like that, right? We talk very much about, well, the restroom is in the hallway on the right from the, and so on. Another problem when we talk about the aspect of then using examples and using the big data is this, making sure that the data is representing really the knowledge we want to represent. So I usually say, okay, this example that I have been using for a really long time. When you look at the first image, you know what it is, right? It's a frying pan, right? Most of you know what that is, yeah? And then I show you this image, and then you still say it's a frying pan, right? but there is something in the shape of that object that fulfills a function of something else. Now I ask you the same question. Let's say that you need to explain to somebody what a chair is. So how many of you would say, well, chair is something that I can sit on? Yeah, it's usually most of you. So you don't explain the shape, you explain the function of something, right? But I can sit on the floor, I can sit on the table, and the chairs that you are right now sitting on are not at all representative of those chairs that you have in your kitchens, right? Because most of these chairs don't have legs, and you can't carry them around. So this is what makes things difficult, that even objects that to some extent we consider to be very simple to explain what they are, usually have a function that may fulfill different types of activities, or don't resemble visually the attributes of something that you have described that object to be. So chairs without legs, what would that be? Now, in most of the cases, this will not be a problem, right? Because we hope that the statistics of having many good examples will solve the problem, right? So we will be seeing that the frying pan is mostly used in cooking scenarios, not for playing tennis. Because if it was, then your robot that is packing your tennis bag just before your tennis match would always be putting a frying pan in your bag. So if you had 99 of those images and just one that is kind of taken in a cooking scenario. And then it's about putting labels on images. So is this positive or a negative example? Most of us would say that this is a negative example. But if there is an intruder in your house and you need to protect yourself, well, for that situation is actually a positive example. And that's another big problem that we are dealing with, okay, in the area of research that I'm doing. The same image can mean good things in one context and bad things in another context. And these are just easy examples. But more of those are we faced with, and we sometimes even don't know when we don't know what the data is that we stored, okay? And now we are developing methods that are kind of like learning about good and bad examples in an unsupervised manner. So having just a machine dealing with what's good, what's bad. So one of the challenges for the future is, of course, making sure that the data that we have used to teach the robot something has been used in the right way, and that the robot somehow by magic will know that, in certain situations this is a good example, and in some situations it's not. These images are very difficult to understand, and I'm not going to even try to explain them. But one of the things I wanted to say is that robotics is also very much about mathematics. It's about understanding what and how different types of mathematical methods can be used in order to deal with problems like this and understand the data. So cluster the data, as we say. So understand what are good examples of something and what are bad examples of something. One of the newer ways of understanding the data is so-called topological data analysis. So this is just one of the slides where I want you to hear some of the buzzwords that are going to be used, I would say, for the next 10 years in this area. It's about using old theories on new problems, or rather new theories in mathematics in order to understand very complex big data. So the image on your left, upper left, it's from Shanghai port, and it shows trajectories of the ships, how these move. So what we try to understand with this data set is basically how the sea and the ship is populated by these ships, how ships move, and whether we can develop an AI system that is kind of like optimizing and controlling the motion of the ships, so that in some optimal way, so that as much as possible of the sea area is used, and so on. And again, the application itself didn't have anything to do with robotics, but what now start to be kind of an interesting net result of this is that we can use exactly the same mathematical methodology to understand how people move in, for example, in the underground, or like in the city, and so on. And from these patterns of understanding the human movement, if something happens, like situation that we had in Stockholm a couple of weeks back, and so on, one can use this information to, let's say, support the search and rescue teams to help move humans around, and so on. So the main message is that many of the techniques we use kind of like for reasoning in robots can also be used in other areas. Now, a few words about physical human-robot interaction. I showed it on my first slide. This is also, from the engineering point of view, a very interesting problem. So try to understand how to build systems that make this interaction very natural, so that the human can communicate visually, dialogue with a robot in the same way as it would do with a human. So I'm not going to go through the mathematics. There are some really nice ways of how we can talk about that. But one of the ideas, actually, for developing and control an interaction system was based on a book that one of the Nobel Prize winners, Daniel Kahneman, I think that he got the Nobel Prize in economics, if I'm not mistaken, wrote about how we, humans, work. Has anybody read this book? Yeah. Good, excellent. Then you know about the slow system and the fast system, the reactive system, and more kind of like reasoning system. And this is exactly now how lots of the thinking, or lots of the software that the robot has access to is being built. Fast reactive system based on direct sensory system on the bottom that kind of interacts with the environment and takes hand, for example, of objects slipping from the hand or something like that. And in parallel, a more kind of like reasoning, long-term reasoning system based on experience and so on is run, and these two systems communicate. So lots of the things we know about humans and biological systems are used and inspire development of different types of architectures in robots. I like this title. I don't know who I stole it with, who I stole it from. Old Methods on Steroids. I wanted to say a couple of words about deep learning and learning with these big neural nets, since lots of people are talking about that, and I'm going to say also why. It's not really, this is just one example where we see how processing power and the fact that we can combine lots of data with computer clusters and things like that can all of a sudden, a method that existed already 30 or 40 years ago can all of a sudden become very practical and very useful, even if the maybe theory behind it is not so novel. So deep learning is, or learning with neural nets in general, is inspired by human brain. So the neural structure of the brain and how the information is being sent by synapses to the different nodes in the brain and so on, and decisions are being made, and the idea of having an external teacher, whether that's our parents or our peers and so on, can give feedback and then train the network in the brain that, again, go back to Kahneman's book, does this fast and slow, reactive and more kind of experience-based thinking and so on. So the idea behind neural nets is very much in the same direction. But why these became popular is because, and now you see from 2010, so this is a rather short span, from having systems that could, for example, process images and say something about what's in the image back in 2010, could do this right in 70% of cases, so the error rate was around 30%. During the past 5 years, have surpassed human. Okay? So today, artificial kind of systems or softwares are better in saying what's in the image than a human is, than a human can. And the same trend we actually also see happening with the speech understanding systems. We are still not there. The systems are still not better than a human. Of course, there are still challenges because now we need to go from single images to video sequences. We need to be able to do this in environments when the lighting conditions are not the best. We need to be able to understand speech in natural kind of like dialogue situations when there is also lots of noise around and so on. But we see that there is a great potential that the artificial kind of like system offer in terms of doing things better than humans. So I have only 5 minutes left, so I wanted to finish with a little bit of examples again from the own lab. In order to be able to build systems that interact with humans, we need to be able to predict the most likely, let's say, thing that the human will do next. And this is something that we do. When we interact with humans, we say certain things, we have certain expectations and so on. So this is just one example where we track human body, and based on a learned model, we can say the most likely motion that the human will do next. So we have a sequence of predictions of the motion that the human will do in 1 to 2 seconds, most likely. And why do we need this? We need this when a human and a robot collaborate, right? The robot should understand what the human will do most likely and act appropriately. Other things that we do, we also want robots to learn how to do things. Maybe this is not so very scientific, so throwing ball on a Pokemon. But when you come home, take a ball, put the number of objects on the table, and see how difficult it is to learn how to throw the ball to one of those objects that you put on the table. So learning that dynamic model of throwing, it actually takes some training. And some people are better in that, and some people, no matter how much you train, you just don't get good in it, right? So here we are exploring so-called reinforcement learning technique, where the reward of this kind of the reinforcement itself is when the robot hits the right object. So it learns itself how to do that by trying and trying and trying. And robots will be doing that in the future, trying and trying and trying because they don't get tired. And they can train much longer than humans. They can get better in things than humans because they have time to train. So the techniques are there. So it will be interesting to see how, maybe not throwing balls on Pokemons, but training something else. Okay, so I think that I need to finish. I will finish with a couple of systems that are on the market. I want to say a little bit about virtual reality and augmented reality, since these areas are also very related to robotics. IPsoft, a company, developed Amelia, which is kind of like a cognitive agent that you can talk to. So It's claimed to understand, I haven't tried it, natural dialogue, but not only that, it can, from the way you speak, understand whether you're a satisfied customer, an angry customer, and it can act based on, your kind of, your state, if I can say like that. One of the banks, I'm not gonna name any banks, is using this as a kind of like front end. When you call in and you need help from your bank, then you talk to Amelia. Now, this is Sophia from Hanson Robotics. Hanson Robotics is working very much on building robots that are very human-like, that have human-like appearance. This one is maybe a very scary one because it doesn't, I mean, it looks like a human, right? But you see that it's not, so the whole uncanny valley shows itself. But what Hanson Robotics says is that their idea is to actually deal with this uncanniness, or the fact that we don't like it or dislike it or so on, by showing that actually it is a robot, by showing the brain in a way. So there are ways of how to convey that this is a machine, this is not a human, in order to get kind of like higher acceptance. A couple of weeks ago, I reviewed one of the Swedish projects which made me very, very happy, which was in this direction, looking into how to build artificial psychologists, or system for artificial psychologists. So originally the idea was developed, or the system was developed by DARPA, the American defense industry, where they looked into how to deal with soldiers that were in very heavy situations on the kind of like, that came back and that they didn't want to open themselves for another person, a human, because they had lots of guilt feelings. They were in some situations and needed to make decisions which were maybe not ethical and so on. So they couldn't be or get treated because they couldn't open themselves. So they tested to use kind of like an artificial system. So the soldiers knew that they had a dialogue with the machine. So they saw that they had much easier time of talking about situations and so on by using an artificial system. So I think that this is an area where we will see also applications for the kind of like general public. So maybe having your app psychologist in the phone that you talk to a little bit before going to work and so on, giving you some self-confidence and things like that. And it sounds really funny and nobody will want to have it, but yeah, I think lots of people will. Just 2 slides more. So a little bit about augmented reality. There is a lot to be said, but if I'm to choose one example, I think that this was really, really cool. So how do you make products more kind of user-friendly by using the technology such as this one? So this is Mercedes, if I'm not mistaken. So they're trying to make cars more kind of like pedestrian-friendly by, if you're in a situation and you don't know whether the car will stop or not, they can signal to the pedestrian, it's free to pass, I will stop, by actually projecting a kind of like this passing line in front of the car. And I thought that that was really interesting. So the question is whether and to what extent the other car producers will want to have it. But the technology, again, can be used to enhance or improve also the products that we are or change the way we are thinking about safety for many of the products. Robots and humans, there is a lot to be said. Integrating or building only robot parts that are also integrated with the body. There are lots of ethical issues here. I'm not going to say too much about Nigel here. But anyway, he lost his arm in an accident at work, and then he got this very advanced black arm that he has 5 fingers, he can move all the fingers, and I usually ask, okay, we all think that this is good for Nigel and so on, when we know that he lost it in an accident and so on. But then I say, what would we think if the Nigel said, well, I'm so weak in my body and I couldn't find a job, so I cut off my arm, I operated and made myself kind of like stronger by operating a robotic arm, because he can actually lift 30 kilos with each finger, and he can, you understand, hurt another human much easier than he could before. And of course, nobody thinks that that's fine and that's okay. But the problem is that when it comes to systems like that, there needs to be lots of kind of like development also when it comes to kind of like ethical boards and things like that, and lots of education too, right? Because we don't think that improving your body physically or just for that reason is okay. But on the other hand, we allow plastic operation. We allow people to look more beautiful and get jobs they couldn't get before because they look better. And somehow that seems to be accepted in the society. And where does the line go? What's right, what's wrong? So I think that there is a lot to be said still about the ethical and moral aspects of systems like that. I'm going to jump over 3D printing and leave you with the image of Boston Dynamics robots, just to show you why I'm both kind of like proud and depressed about being an engineer. I'm proud because other people can do things like this. I'm depressed because I can't. But I think that just to show you a little bit what can be built and how even physically robots can move in terrains and do things that humans can't. So thank you.
Thank you, Danica. You said you just touched briefly on the ethics question. I'm thinking we just might end up getting further into that in the Q&A session now. But I just wanted to ask you on this. Do you think that that we need more skills like in society and also amongst decision makers on this? Do people need to know more, and how can we come about that to make the right decisions? Because as you just pointed out, so we allow for people to do surgery on their faces. Maybe we could allow them to have a strong arm, or no? And if we need to think about those things, we need to know about those things. Do we know?
No, absolutely. I think that well, talks like this, I mean, talking to general public. So I think that academia needs to find time for having conversation with general public, but also then going to schools and talking to kids, tell them about the technology. And I think that it would be also nice to in schools have more proactivity in terms having something that is research related and having opinions about things already when it comes to children. But then with politicians, I think that lots of the many of us from the academia talk to politicians. But I don't think that just talking is enough. And I think that lots of politicians are thinking short term. I mean, it's the nature of their job, I suppose. But we need more kind of, let's say, research-grounded discussion in the society. And if you read newspapers also, I think that today the research is by general public not valued enough.
Right.
So, you know, so I think that general public needs to understand the value of research, and also that maybe only a researcher can say whether these images are or these videos is this real, or has just somebody done something, a video of something that is not for real. Sometimes it's very difficult to say the things that you see at YouTube, Is this something that people have really built and it's based on good research or not? And I think that we haven't yet started to have discussions like that and to have researchers kind of being valued for their opinion by politicians or by general public in the large, let's say, in the volume that I would like to see at least.
Yes. I will now open for questions from you. And to do this, we're using this terrific device called a catch box. Those of you that are new in the room might not have seen one of these before, but as you can tell from the name, it's a box that you can catch when somebody throws it at you. And inside it is a microphone, so you just hold it up under your chin and you speak. So who wants to go first? There you go.
I'll try to do my best. This is my first time.
Hold it up a little higher.
Okay, like this.
Perfect.
So first, I would like to tell you that I did my PhD in 2014 in cognitive computing and systems, and nowadays I work with more applied problems. I haven't worked much with robotics, but your talk made me curious to ask you a question, and I don't hesitate this to share with all other people here. So my question is, you basically showed us very interesting applications of robotics. And truth to be said, I also have seen many of those. The thing is, it is my impression, my personal impression, that with the force of programming alone, while hiring a lot of people, if we have enough venture capital, and if we narrow the problem quite down, then I think we can do very impressive applications. The question which I have is, the last 15 years, since you did your PhD, how much you have seen something that has impressed you from the perspective of a robot being cognitive? For example, the problem that you had with pizza baking, like the problem of simple grounding, how that has gone and how do you see will go in the future? Thank you.
Now, I think that if you ask me to tell you about one system, I don't think that I can point to anybody in the world and that I can say I'm really impressed what this robot can do. And the reason for this is that most of the systems that we have been seeing so far that can also kind of like have dialogue with humans and so on are handmade, if I can say like that. There is a human kind of like building some form of ontology, some form of a description that seems reasonable to us. So everything is grounded in a human. And then we assume that you know, we have taken care of many of the uncertainties by having kind of lots of data, lots of examples, or lots of situations. The biggest problem I see is that we are grounding things in how we humans kind of understand things. And as I said, robots are measuring different things, and they maybe need to ground things very differently in a way than humans can. But this is a big of a problem, right? Because then the human would need to learn or understand the ways the robot generates knowledge, and you can't put a system like that on the market, not just yet. So I think in order to achieve kind of like robots really using the full potential of their own sensing and grounding their sensing in their understanding of the world will require a completely different interaction with the human, and we are just not yet there. So I think that, you know, whatever we can innovate code and find relations to some measurements that the robot does, yeah, we can do that, but is that really robot cognition? This is, you know, human cognition in a way instantiated in a robot.
We have a gentleman over here, so if you can throw it as far as you can, and people will help you on the way.
Whoa.
That was good. That was good.
Hi. I come to think when you refer to Kahneman and thinking fast and slow. Reading his work, I refer to Robert Cialdini and influence. You're familiar with his concept of shortcuts?
No, I don't think so.
Basically, and Kahneman elaborates on that in his work, that we live in an illusion of making informed decisions. We mostly get clued by everyone is walking in that direction. That must be good coffee or something. And that's why we all walk into a slaughterhouse and so on. Will robots also be living in an illusion of making informed decisions?
Yeah, I think that it relates very much to the previous question, because it's very much kind of like in line what we know about humans and humans' decision making and what we want system to do at the end. And I think that this is one of the challenges that we have, right? Because do you want your robot to do, will you accept a robot that does things differently and that varies from what the human expects it to do? Is this really the product that you paid for? And from one point of view, we really pay for the function. I mean, this is what we saw, for example, with vacuum cleaners and lawn mowers and so on. But I mean, honestly, for 20 years, we haven't seen anything else on the market than those types of systems. And those systems have a very defined function, right? And then we saw that through interaction, when they do mistakes, you know, we feel sorry for them in a way. Oh, poor robot, look at it. Now it can't move. It's in the corner. Let me help you. So I think that it's a combination of we maybe evolving or the relationship with the technical device evolving, and maybe our, again, well, the expectations on the function. I mean, some people will do that, feel sorry for the robot. Some of them will get really angry and return the robot to the store because it just gets in the corner all the time and it's not doing its own job. So now the question is, when you have a robot with many more functions, and it will depend very much on the application area. If you have elderly, kids with special needs, autistic kids, you don't want lots of variation there. You want them to do their thing.
I have a follow-up thought. You're familiar with design patterns from, So would design patterns, which was intended for people, young, inexperienced people to not make as many mistakes while learning in architecture and later in software, would that be something that?
Precisely, this is one of the things that one is thinking about, but. The problem that one experiences is this kind of like getting bored of something and fulfilling a function in a way. Yeah. So this was the problem that Sony had with their dogs and cats, right? It was just a toy, right? So the first kind of like months or maybe weeks, people were very excited because it was kind of like a mechanical thing that moved around and it can recognize your face and it could follow you and so on. But then after some time, it couldn't do anything more. There was no variation in the behavior, so you get tired of it. And this is why they stopped selling them, right? Because it just felt that, well, okay, it's just this stupid dog and it can recognize images and yeah, okay, I've seen that. I don't want it anymore. So the question is, if you start to think about human companions, if you start to think about kind of like higher level, whatever cognitive systems, I think that we need variety. But then, you know, how far can that variety go? Can your robot that you bought for cleaning your home one day just say, oh, I'm so tired today. I don't feel like cleaning. I'm sorry. So I'm just gonna watch TV whole day. Is that okay? I mean, maybe, you know, you will get surprised and it would be cool and, you know, but how often should a robot do that? And these are the things that people have only started to look at. I mean, if you look into the whole human-robot interaction, like conference or community, it's still very much on the appearance level. So how big eyes should the robot have, or what should be kind of the shape of the body or the head in order for a human to have an acceptance for a system? So the behavior.
Should it follow Asimov's 3 laws and so on?
At least, plus some more.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, we have over there. Yeah, or there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just following up on this idea of shortcuts and, I mean, cognition and all these things. It's very interesting, your example of, well, humans will follow people just because people are going somewhere, but then they'll backwards rationalize it as, oh, well, there must be something interesting, blah, blah. It seems to me that, as you say, robots operate in a different paradigm. As we become more and more dependent on machine learning, deep learning, we're getting to a place where we don't really know what that rationale is. And there's a big problem with transparency and interrogability and things like that. So I guess my question to you is, if they are operating in this different paradigm, how important is it that we understand it, and how important is it, like, how far can we carry the analogy? If humans are not perfectly rational, do we need machines to be perfectly rational?
Are we rational?
No, I'm saying, like, we're not,
Yeah,
but
I know.
For some reason we think machines should be.
Yeah, no, but this is exactly my point. I think that we are rational, most of us, in most of cases, based on the information that we have access to. Now, the big thing is that the robots will probably have access to much more information than we humans, and will be able to kind of like act and make decisions on much larger corpus of data. So that's one thing. So I don't think that that rational may be exactly the same, and then you have the whole cultural aspect and upbringing and so on. The second thing that I think is important is, the whole liability aspect. If you want to make systems that are safe, you will need to ensure somehow that those robots are kind of like making decisions or suggestions based or optimized on something. And I will say on something because I don't know what that something will be. When we make decisions, not all our decisions are either rational or ethical or moral, right? And not even on daily basis, right? Because we make decisions based. If we are in a hurry and we need to make to a meeting and taking a taxi and not walking, and lots of things we do and lots of decisions we make, we put ourselves, maybe and our family, at the first place. But now robots that are programmed to act rationally or optimally based on a larger corpus of people, and even if it's my robot, he will not put me or my family at the first place. So I think that rationality is something that would seem maybe rational or good to me. It will not be the same stand that the robot has. The question is, can the robot communicate that before it acts, so that it tells me what it's going to do before it does it, right? Situation like that is not going to probably happen when we have car crash situation. But these are exactly kind of like questions that we will need to put on the table, and lots of people will need to discuss this. If self-driving cars need to crash in a wall or in a truck or in another car, how is that situation resolved, and what's rational in that case? So how do you communicate that? And in some situations, the robot or the system will not be able to communicate it before it happens. And that's why I put the image of the context understanding, which I think is extremely important.
Another question there? And then we have one there at the back.
Okay, so my question is more about ethics in AI in general rather than only robots. So you mentioned this deep learning has revolutionized the AI field in the past 5 years. And today you have these neural nets translating text and recognizing cats or whatever. Tomorrow they will decide whether or not I'm eligible to get a loan in a bank, for example. They will be used in the surveillance systems to estimate how likely someone to steal something. And they will have a potential to be biased, to just pick up our own biases. Yeah. And to be racially insensitive and so on. So my question is, we need to think about training people who will design these AI systems in ethics?
No, absolutely. Absolutely, one needs to think about when the systems are used for, as you said, things such as, I don't know, identification purposes of different sorts. It might be. I think that this is really important to take into account. But also, I think that the community understands very well that deep learning is not the solution to everything. And the deep learning is just one technology which has now proven to be a good solution on a couple of different problems, but not at all the problems that we need to deal with. So it's about combining different types of methods and combining maybe, the good old decision-making systems and expert systems with the new technology, but then also in close interaction with humans, because at the end, it will be humans using these systems and deciding about using these systems in different situations. Now, the Amazon Go, I mean the store where you just go in and take the things and you go out and everything is paid for you and things like that, is just one way of testing, in a way, how far one can push different types of technologies, but not everything there is deep learning. And there will be issues, I think, that has to do with integrity and personal information and so on, that especially with the new EU law and the things that we have heard before lunch, will need to be taken into account in a better way.
We had a question almost at the far back. If you put your hands up so you can catch it, put both hands up so they can see where you're throwing.
Oh.
Yes, thank you.
Hello. Right, so my name is Amelia, and I have a background working in the European Parliament with exactly information and communications policy.
Hold it up a little bit, Amelia, we'll hear you better. Thank you.
I have a comment on the interactions of politicians with technology, and especially the assertion that there would be a short-term view on the implications of robotics. So I think robotics are given political attention first, which is the government is investigating it in Sweden. The European Parliament passed a resolution last year. But they're primarily given political attention in the context of warfare and weapon systems. And this is also confirmed by some of the projects that you've presented, that the funders are military agencies or various organizations connected to military operations. So I think there is a long-term political view, ironically, insofar as we're seeing robotics. I would say we as in a society are using robotics in a way that we can kill the enemy safely without inflicting moral or physical harm onto our own troops. So it's just a different long-term game from some of these considerations about self-driving cars. And it's also a much discussed problem, I guess, in political economy and research. What do we do about this focus on warfare and the political classes? What is the way to address the military-industrial complex and so forth? But is the issue then not really more that in computer science research, up until very few years ago, ethics weren't really discussed at all, and now it's become this huge issue. And I'm thinking also about Professor Philip Rogaway at UCLA published this brilliant essay on the ethics of cryptography and how cryptographers need to be aware of where their money and funding comes from, who pays for them to develop these algorithms, and for what purpose are they deployed. And so I would like to hear some of your reflections on that in the context of this research also.
Yeah, many things I can say about that. So my comment about this short term and politician is that sometimes you can't assess the quality of the technology or the usefulness of the technology if you don't introduce it to regular users. In order to be able to bring something to the market, it's not always, that you want venture capital, because venture capital will want to have fast returns. So many of us researchers don't want to go into that area because it's, we just don't want to just build products for somebody then to earn money on it. I'm thinking very much more kind of like long term. So in order to understand whether and what we could do with self-driving vehicles, we need to make a political decision about introducing self-driving vehicles in parts of the cities. And it's only that way that we will be able to learn about what's kind of like the next step of the development that we need to do in order to make even better systems. 20 years ago, we have been drawing rollator. What's that?
Like
the walking
rolling
help,
support chair
yeah.
type thing, yeah.
Walkers.
Walkers, yeah.
You know, we had an idea about how we can make those more autonomous, how we can add maybe also some like small, simple arms on those to help people to fetch things in stores and things like that. Who will pay for that, both for the development and also, you know, for the for people or end users to have them? It's not going to happen in Sweden because the landsting and kommun, so they don't want to pay more than they are already paying for the systems that are there. And you know where it's going to happen? In the land where we thought at least 20 years ago it's going to happen. It's going to happen in US. Why? Because you have lots of wealthy old people and you have lots of old people with wealthy kids that don't want to take care of their parents. And you don't have a system that is taking care of the elderly. So those that have money are now putting lots of money in the development of things like that. And Sweden, I think, is going to lag after US in that development because politicians cannot change the way that the structure in the society in Sweden is working. So this is what I meant. I think that politicians need to kind of like see what the low-hanging fruits are and make sure that we use the systems that are available and that don't cost lots of money, but making those small decisions is actually very difficult in Sweden.
Thank you very much, Danica. We are wrapping up, and I want to show you that how grateful the arrangers are that you made it here. We have a small gift for you, and this is very exciting. We're looking forward to seeing Danica again on the panel this afternoon, but for now, thanks.
Thank you so much.